Stepmother forces girl to marry homeless man. Weeks later they return in a private jet. The autumn dusk in Atlanta painted the sky orange as neighbors gathered on Maple Street, drawn by the loud voices echoing from the Henderson home. Margaret Henderson's shrill tone cut through the cool air like a blade as she pointed her manicured finger at the young man standing at the front gate. "Ryan Mitchell," she yelled, her voice sharp enough to break glass. "Who exactly do you think you are? Just because you helped my daughter Jessica when her BMW broke down last month, you think that makes you husband material? Listen here, boy, know your place. Why don't you go find someone of your own social class instead of embarrassing yourself at my doorstep?" The neighbors gasped, some covering their mouths in shock. Others leaned on each other, eager to hear more. The drama had begun. Ryan swallowed hard. He wanted to explain, but her venom didn't give him a chance. "You insulted my daughter," Margaret continued, adjusting her expensive coat with pride. "You'd better kneel down now and apologize before she loses her patience. I won't warn you again." Before Ryan could breathe, the door burst open. Out came Jessica, tall, bold, and dripping with arrogance. She wasn't holding a purse or a phone. No. In her hand was a bucket, not of clean water, but dark, dirty, stinking water. She looked at him once, smiled maliciously, and before anyone could blink, whoosh. The dirty water rained down on him from head to toe. Sighs filled the air, followed by uncontrollable laughter. Some neighbors clapped, others doubled over with mockery. "This man came to their house," murmured an elderly woman. "What a disgrace," added another, shaking his head. Ryan froze. His shirt stuck to his body, soaked and stinking. He looked at himself again, wondering if this was really happening. In his entire life, he had never been so wretched, so stripped of dignity, so naked in front of strangers without taking his clothes off. Jessica dropped the bucket carelessly and sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Next time, don't dream above your station. Not all fruit is for the monkey, dear." The crowd roared with laughter again. Margaret clapped her hands in feigned pity. "You'd better take your poverty elsewhere before I call security. Imagine you wanting to marry my daughter. Who gave you such confidence? Poverty can make people dream nonsense." Ryan's chest rose and fell. His eyes burned, not with anger, but with humiliation. The floor beneath him seemed as if it should open up and swallow him whole. He clenched his fists but said nothing. For the first time in his life, he tasted shame, bitter and raw. The neighbors whispered among themselves, some pitying him, others mocking him louder. He wanted to scream. He wanted to remind them that the same hands they laughed at had carried Jessica home when she was stranded in the night. But what was the use? His kindness had been repaid with cruelty. As the laughter grew, Ryan turned slowly, dripping, broken, humiliated, the weight of shame heavy on his chest. Then the iron gate creaked. In came Sophia, Margaret Henderson's stepdaughter, a gentle soul, always treated as the shadow of the house. She stopped the moment her eyes landed on Ryan. Her lips parted in shock. "My God, what happened? Did you fall in the gutter?" she asked, rushing toward him without hesitation. The crowd shifted. Whispers ran through them like fire. Some laughed. Others waited to see what drama this other daughter would add to the scene. Ryan opened his mouth. But no words came out. His pride was shattered, his throat dry. Sophia didn't wait for an answer. She looked at his dripping clothes again, then quickly took off her own jacket. "Here," she said softly, trying to cover her shame. "Don't be like that. Please take it." The spectators sighed. Some laughed, but the loudest sound came from Margaret and Jessica, both bursting into cruel laughter. The wonders never cease. Margaret clapped her hands as if she had just seen a circus show. "So Sophia, the man from the gutter is now your Prince Charming, huh? Because no normal person can look at that thing and call it a human being." Jessica almost doubled over with laughter, clutching her stomach. "Look at this comedy," she sneered. "Poor meets poorer. Maybe you should tie your scarf around him too, so you two can start your beggar's marriage right away." The crowd echoed her laughter, feeding on the cruelty. Some men slapped each other on the back. Others whistled. Children pointed with their little fingers and jeered. Uncle fell in the dirty water. But Sophia stood her ground. She ignored them, pulled her scarf from her waist, and shamelessly tried to wrap it around Ryan's shoulders. Her voice trembled with anger and pity. Enough, Jessica. Enough, Mom. He's still human. Let's treat him better. Her words only fueled Jessica's arrogance. She tossed her long hair back and hissed. Oh please. Poverty is contagious, dear, and I don't want to catch it. He's your type. Margaret laughed maliciously, crossing her arms. Let her cover him, Jessica. Maybe this is the only man she'll ever get. At least you won't die single. The mockery burned like fire. Ryan lowered his head. He wanted to speak, to defend Sophia from their cutting tongues, but his voice was stuck in his chest. Sophia's eyes softened. She whispered to Ryan, "Take this jacket. Take the scarf, please." He looked at her, shocked by the rare kindness amid the cruelty. For a moment, his heart trembled, not from humiliation, but from the warmth of someone seeing him as human again. Still, a sound of mockery drowned out that fragile moment. The laughter, the sarcasm, the shame. Ryan decided to leave. Margaret's face hardened. Her eyes turned to Sophia with venom. "If he's leaving," Margaret said coldly, "then you should go with him." The crowd gasped. All eyes turned to Sophia. "Yes, Sophia." Margaret sneered. "Since you like to show off as if you're better than my Jessica, then prove it. He came here to marry my daughter. And since we're not of your class, go marry him instead. Right here, right now." Sophia's eyes widened like a trapped bird. "Mother, I'm not ready for marriage yet," she stammered, her voice trembling. That was all Jessica needed. She burst out laughing so loudly that the neighbors grabbed their stomachs. Margaret joined in, clapping her hands in mockery. "Look at your trembling lips," Jessica sneered. "Princess Sophia afraid to marry her prince from the gutter." Sophia's knees weakened and she collapsed before Margaret. Her tears flowed as she begged, "Please, Mother, don't send me away. I beg you. Not like this." But Margaret's face showed no mercy. Her lips curved into a cruel smile. "Sophia, you don't understand. I was looking for a way to get you out of this house. And now God has answered me. Since you love this street rat, your ticket out is approved. Follow him." The crowd howled with laughter. Someone shouted, "Wedding of the century." Another said, "Union of beggar and beggar." Sophia covered her face with her palms, trembling. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The humiliation was too much to bear. Ryan, who had been frozen the whole time, finally took a step forward. His eyes, still dripping with shame, softened when they landed on Sophia. His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. "Sophia, you will certainly be fine with me." Sophia looked at him through her tears. Her voice cracked like broken glass. "Yes, maybe. But I don't think it should be like this." Her words were drowned out by another round of laughter. Jessica clapped her hands, mocking loudly. "Oh, so this is romance now. My God, look at them. Two beggars writing love letters with their eyes." The neighbors applauded her sarcasm. Ryan's fists clenched. Still, something inside him refused to let Sophia drown in the same humiliation. He took a deep breath, lifted his head, and said calmly but firmly, "Ma'am, please let me do this right, even if it's discreet. Sophia deserves that respect. I'll be back to pick her up in 2 weeks." For a moment, silence fell. Then Margaret threw her head back and laughed until her handkerchief nearly slipped. Jessica doubled over, slapping her thighs. 2 weeks. Jessica scoffed. "Do you think you have money for wedding rice? Or are you going to fry a fish on the side of the road for us?" The crowd gathered again, some even pretending to sing wedding songs in mockery. Sophia's tears flowed freely now, her body shaking as she tried to cover her face. The humiliation was unbearable. And amid all the laughter and sarcasm, Ryan stood beside her, wet, mocked, disgraced, but quietly clinging to a dignity that no one else could see. As soon as Ryan walked out the gate, dripping with dirty water and swallowed up by the cruel laughter of the neighbors, Jessica's smile turned into a wicked grin. She spun on her heels, grabbed Sophia roughly by the wrist, and dragged her inside like a prisoner being taken to jail. "I swear," Jessica hissed, her eyes burning with hatred, "those 2 weeks of yours won't smell like a honeymoon. It will be a nightmare. I'll make sure of it." Her words stung Sophia's heart like whips. She staggered backward, tears still blurring her eyes. The moment they stepped into the living room, Margaret leaned back in her chair, fanning herself proudly. Her lips curved into a smile that cut deeper than any slap. "You foolish girl," Margaret said coldly. "Do you know what kind of disgrace you brought upon me out there? You stand in front of the whole street, next to that gutter boy, making it look like my daughter is the villain. Who gave you that right?" Sophia fell to her knees instantly, sobbing. "I'm sorry, Mom. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to." "Shut your filthy mouth," Margaret thundered, her voice like a whip. "Do you think taking care of you since your parents died is a joke? Huh? Do you know how many mouths have insulted me because I took you in and fed you under my roof? Do you think I owe you anything?" Jessica, standing tall beside her mother, burst out laughing mockingly. She crossed her arms and sneered. "Mom, don't waste your breath on her. Let's train her for her new life with her street rat." Margaret's eyes flashed with malice. She pointed to her room. "Go now. Empty my closet. Every piece of clothing I own. From my handkerchiefs to my dresses, from lace to satin. Bring them all out here. You will wash them by hand. Not a drop of water from the machine. I want them scrubbed until your fingers bleed." Sophia froze, staring at her with wide, trembling eyes. "Mom, please. Not all of them. It's too much." "Did you hear me stutter?" Margaret roared. "Every single one of them. Since you claim to be ready to be with a poor man, you must learn to suffer like the wives of beggars. No rest, no mercy." Jessica clapped her hands with glee, her voice dripping with mockery. "Yes. Wash them until the skin peels off your hands. That way, when your street husband finally comes to get you, you'll be fully trained. After all, in his house, there will be no washing machine, only dirty gutters." Margaret laughed so loudly that the walls shook. "Jessica, you're right. Hand washing will prepare her for the next chapter of her miserable life. Let her start practicing." Sophia's tears fell harder. She bit her lips until they bled. Her shoulders shook as she crawled toward the closet like a condemned prisoner. Jessica followed her, throwing cruel words like stones. "Hurry up, you filthy thing. Do you think crying will save you? Crying won't wash the clothes. When you're done, maybe you'll finally look like the poor man's wife you're supposed to be." From that day forward, Sophia's life in the house became nothing short of a prison. Every sunrise felt like punishment. Every step she took echoed with mockery. Sometimes Margaret and Jessica would deliberately turn off the taps in the bathroom and kitchen. When Sophia complained about the lack of water, Jessica would hiss and throw the key into her purse. "No water for lazy beggars," she would say with a smile. Then Margaret would order, "Go to the street tap. Let everyone see that you are practicing for your marriage. If you can't carry buckets on your head, then you are not fit to be a poor man's wife." And so Sophia, once a quiet girl who still had fragments of dignity, would be forced to go out with plastic buckets. Her cheeks burned as she passed her neighbors. Some pitied her, but most laughed, whispering that Margaret Henderson's stepdaughter had finally joined her class. Children sang behind her, "Gutter bride, gutter bride," until her tears mixed with the sweat on her face. At the tap, the women mocked her and blocked her turn, telling her to wait until last. After all, they would say, she wasn't washing clothes for herself, but for her mistress. Sophia endured, lifting heavy buckets back and forth until her neck ached and her palms blistered. But that was only outside. Inside the house, the cruelty grew sharper. Whenever Margaret had visitors, she made Sophia her object of entertainment. One afternoon, while wealthy friends sat in the parlor drinking juice, Margaret deliberately shouted, "Sophia, come here, you useless girl. Kneel down and greet my guests properly. Show them how humble my charity case is." Sophia came forward, kneeling, her face burning with shame as the guests looked on. Jessica laughed, adding fuel to the fire. "Mother, don't waste your voice. Tell her to sing for them too. That's what poor people do to entertain the rich." The guests laughed at the sarcasm, and Sophia's lips trembled as tears filled her eyes. But she didn't dare disobey. She lowered her head further, swallowing her sobs like bitter medicine. It was a life of mockery, a daily parade of cruelty. Margaret treated her like a stranger, Jessica like a slave. But through it all, Sophia clung to a fragile thread of hope. She whispered to herself in the silence of the night, "Just 2 weeks. If Ryan keeps his word, maybe, just maybe, this suffering will end. What she didn't know was that her humiliation was only the beginning. 2 days before the wedding, the dusty street was eerily quiet when Ryan appeared at the gate. He was dressed better than before. His shirt was neat, his pants ironed, and although his shoes were worn, they shone as if he had spent the night polishing them. He held a small plastic bag, his fingers trembling with nervousness. He knocked gently. Jessica opened the gate and froze for a moment before recognition lit up her face. Then she burst out in mocking laughter. "Mom, come see Comedy Part 2. The gutter man is back." Margaret's voice thundered from inside. "What now?" She rushed outside, adjusting her scarf, her lips already curled in disdain. Ryan bowed his head respectfully. His voice was low, almost pleading. I came to bring my fiancée's dress. I know I don't have much, but I want Sophia to look at least a little better on her day." He lifted the plastic bag carefully as if it were gold. For a second, there was silence. Then Margaret suddenly threw her head back and let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "A dress?" Jessica shouted between her laughter. "You mean you, the beggar on the street, bought a dress for your wife? My God, Mom. He killed me today. Please, someone call an ambulance before I pass out from laughing so hard." Margaret snatched the bag from her hands and waved it like trash. "So, this is what you came to brag about? Do you think this is appropriate for a wedding? You should have borrowed it from a masquerade costume. At least that would look more expensive." Jessica doubled over, tears streaming down her cheeks from laughing so hard. "Mom, don't be so harsh. Maybe he saved all his gutter money to buy this. It must have cost what? 5 coins. The nearby neighbors, who had already begun to gather as usual, murmured and laughed, watching the humiliation unfold like a theatrical play. Ryan's face burned, his lips parted, but no words came out. He stood like a man carved in shame. His hands, now empty without the bag, trembled at his sides. Margaret lifted the bag without opening it. "Wedding dress, huh? She's not around right now. Don't worry. We'll deliver your royal message to her," she said with dripping sarcasm. Then her voice sharpened like a blade. "And listen carefully, boy. You have 2 days to clean up your mess. After that, I don't want to see you or your supposed wife on this property again. Do you hear me?" Jessica leaned against the wall, still laughing. "Mom, don't bother. He won't last that long. Maybe tomorrow he'll run away when he realizes that marriage costs money." The crowd burst into scattered laughter, feeding on the cruelty. Ryan swallowed hard, his throat burning. He lowered his head, forcing himself to whisper, I just wanted to make her day special." But his words were drowned out by Margaret's bitter laughter. "Special? Go save your grandmother. Nothing good comes from poverty. Go clean up your mess before you dare call yourself someone's husband." With that, she dismissed him like a fly. Ryan turned slowly, each step heavier than the last. A few minutes later, when Sophia quietly entered the living room, she immediately noticed the cruel smile dancing on Margaret's face. Jessica stood beside her, arms crossed, her eyes shining with mockery. Margaret's lips curved maliciously as she spoke, her voice dripping with venom. "Your gutter husband was just here, dressed in his usual rags and wretchedness. Imagine, he came to present you with your wedding dress." Jessica clapped her hands in exaggerated mockery, her laughter cutting through the air. "Oh, Sophia, your rat husband really thinks he can make you a bride. Let's see what your gutter prince has brought for his poor wife." She dragged the bag forward and with a theatrical flourish unpacked it. But the laughter froze in her throat. Her eyes widened, her hands trembled slightly. Inside the bag was a breathtaking wedding dress, silk pure white, embroidered with delicate crystals that sparkled in the light. Next to it was a pair of dazzling gold shoes, a matching purse, and sparkling raw gold jewelry that surpassed anything Margaret or Jessica had ever owned. The room fell into tense silence. Margaret and Jessica exchanged glances. First disbelief, then envy. Their lips tightened, their mockery replaced by bitter anger. For the first time in weeks, Sophia's lips curved into a small triumphant smile. Tears clung to the corners of her eyes, but there was pride in her voice as she whispered softly, "For once, my gutter husband has managed to wipe the smiles off their faces." Jessica's nostrils flared. She slammed the bag shut and turned to her mother. "Mom, she can't wear these things. Don't you see? If she does, she'll outshine me. She'll look prettier than me." Margaret's expression darkened. She grabbed the necklace from the bag, holding it up to the light, her greedy eyes devouring the gold. "These are raw gold," she hissed. "Better than the ones I own. No, Sophia can't touch them. In fact, I'm going to keep these jewels for myself. Consider it your payment for all the years I've fed your useless self." Jessica smiled and pulled on the dress. "And I'm going to wear this dress. Look at it, Mother. It's perfect for me. Why waste it on her? She should walk down the aisle in her rags. That suits her better." Sophia's tears fell freely now, her frail body shaking. She clasped her hands together, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please don't take them away from me. Just this once. Let me have what belongs to me. Please, Jessica. Mother, please." On the day of the wedding, at 9:30 in the morning, when Sophia was exhausted from hours of forced labor, wearing dirty rags, a neighbor's shrill voice pierced the air. "Madam Margaret, trouble has arrived. Pack your things. The police have arrived with a convoy." Margaret's hands trembled as she struggled to arrange her wig properly. Jessica clung to her mother's handkerchief, her palms sweating. Then they rushed to the window. But what they saw outside made their lips part in shock. Not police officers, but men in black suits, elegant, polished, and holding walkie-talkies were getting out of the first car. The second car opened, and two men in formal attire stepped out, giving orders to the others. Behind them was a truck decorated with flowers and ribbons, carrying trays of steaming food, bottled drinks, and crates of champagne. The entire street had been transformed into a carnival grounds. Children ran barefoot, pointing at the convoy of elegant cars glistening in the sun. Music blared from the truck, attracting curious neighbors who whispered and argued among themselves. "Who are these people?" one asked. "Did a governor's son get married on this street?" another replied. Some even balanced themselves on stools to peek over the fence. "This can't be real," Margaret whispered, her eyes widening as if they were about to pop out. "Jessica, are we dreaming? This must be the joke of the year." Jessica grabbed her mother's arm, her voice trembling. "Mom, what's going on? Did Sophia know these people?" Before Margaret could answer, the heavy roar of a private jet cut through the air above them. Every neighbor outside cheered and applauded, looking up at the sky. Dust rose as the jet began to land beside the street. Margaret and Jessica's jaws dropped in disbelief. The jet's door opened, and slowly, majestically, Ryan descended. Not the ragged beggar they had once mocked, but transformed. His hair was trimmed. His suit was pure white, gleaming, and his shoes reflected the morning light. Behind him were guards and aides who bowed slightly as he passed. He didn't run. He didn't falter. He walked with the kind of authority Margaret had never seen in her life. As he entered his compound, Margaret and Jessica forced fake smiles, their legs wobbly. "I hope we're not in trouble," she muttered, whispering a prayer she didn't mean. Then, before the gathered crowd and gasping neighbors, Ryan stopped in front of them, bowed gracefully, and said calmly, his voice steady as a king's, "I've come to take my bride home." The world seemed to pause. Sighs spread like wildfire. Neighbors screamed, some even fainting in disbelief. Jessica clutched her chest as if her heart would jump out. Margaret almost collapsed, but held herself up against the wall. Then, out of the house came Sophia. The neighbors' cheers turned to murmurs. She wore rags, the same torn dress Jessica had thrown at her earlier. Her hair was messy, her face marked with sweat, and her slippers barely clung to her feet. Yet even in her disgrace, she walked with dignity. Her trembling hands clasped together. When Ryan turned and his eyes met hers, his expression melted into one of deep pain and love. He took a step forward, then another, until he reached her. Without hesitation, he took off his white jacket and placed it over her shoulders, shielding her from the mocking whispers. Then, lifting her chin, he smiled and whispered for all to hear, "No jewel shines brighter than my bride. Today, she leaves this place of cruelty, never to return." The crowd roared. Neighbors shouted with excitement, some applauding, some crying in disbelief. But Margaret and Jessica were frozen, their hearts pounding like war drums. Their fake smiles now twisted into horror as the reality of the moment hit them harder than thunder. Meanwhile, Ryan's eyes flashed with quiet authority as he fixed his gaze on Margaret and Jessica. He laughed softly. But there was no humor in it. "I knew you would try this," he said firmly, his deep voice cutting through the stunned silence of the crowd. "Humiliation is the only language you know, isn't it? But look," he turned his eyes to Sophia, who was trembling in the tattered dress Jessica had forced on her. "This is not how my bride will enter her new life." The neighbors gasped again, some covering their mouths, others already whispering to each other in disbelief. "Wasn't this the same Sophia?" they mocked as the family maid. "How could such a powerful man be here today and call her his fiancée?" Ryan made a gracious gesture with his hand. Immediately, two elegant women in designer clothes stepped out of one of the cars. Their beauty and composure silenced the murmurs. With a warm smile, Ryan gestured to Sophia. "Go with them," he said gently, his voice softening as he looked into Sophia's tearful eyes. "Transform her, not only as my fiancée, but as the queen she was born to be." The women approached Sophia with respect, bowing slightly before taking her trembling hands. Sophia could hardly believe her own life. Just minutes ago, she had been scrubbing floors and being mocked in rags. Now, strangers who behaved like royalty treated her as if she were precious. Jessica's jaw dropped so wide she could barely close it. This can't be real," she whispered, grabbing her mother's arm. Margaret's lips trembled, the fake smile still plastered on her face, though her eyes betrayed the storm inside. Then, before anyone could blink, Sophia, still clutching the faded dress around her thin body, was guided to the jet. The engines hummed softly, and in a scene that seemed straight out of a fairy tale, the doors closed behind her. Moments later, with everyone's eyes fixed on the skies, the jet rose into the air, carrying Sophia away. The neighbors erupted in wild cheers. Some applauded, some danced, others pointed at Margaret and Jessica, laughing mockingly. "Look how God works," shouted one woman. "The stone they rejected is now flying away in a private jet." "From the gutter to a golden palace," shouted another neighbor. Even children began chanting her name. "Sophia the Queen! Sophia the Queen!" But Ryan did not join in the laughter. He stood firm, his hands clasped behind him, his sharp gaze locked on Margaret and Jessica. Slowly he walked toward them, each step measured, powerful. "I have been told," he said in a low, commanding voice that only they could hear, "how you broke her, how you mocked her, how you crushed her spirit for years. But you never realized that you were training her for a throne." And now he gave a piercing smile. "Now the world will witness what you tried to bury." Jessica's eyes filled with tears of frustration. Her lips trembled. Margaret's body shook. She tried to speak, but the words failed her. Ryan tilted his head slightly, studying their faces. Their once proud expressions now stained with humiliation. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he simply smiled, savoring the irony. "Today," he declared, loud enough for all to hear, "my bride takes flight, and in short order she will return. Not as your servant, but as the woman who bears my name and my crown." The crowd erupted again, their cheers drowning out every last drop of Margaret's false dignity. Margaret staggered backward, grabbing Jessica's arm, unable to bear the weight of shame pressing down on her. And Ryan. He simply turned back to the motorcade, his smile calm, his eyes burning with silent victory as the music from the truck grew louder, celebrating Sophia, the once-forgotten girl whose destiny no one could deny. 2 hours later, the sound of the jet cut through the skies. The crowd stood frozen, unable to breathe, unable to blink. The same girl they had mocked was returning in a private jet. The jet descended slowly, majestically. And when the door finally opened, Sophia stepped out. No longer the trembling girl wearing rags, but a queen in her own right. She wore a dazzling diamond-studded dress that sparkled brighter than the sun itself. Her hair flowed in soft curls, crowned with a tiara so radiant it looked like it was made for royalty. People gasped. Women clutched their breasts. Men shook their heads in disbelief. Children cheered louder. But for Margaret and Jessica, it was the beginning of their deepest shame. Unable to take it anymore, Margaret and Jessica fell to their knees right in front of Ryan. Their tears poured out like broken dams. Jessica crawled forward, grabbing Ryan's pants. "Please, please marry me," she begged desperately. "I was the first person your heart chose. Don't throw me away." Ryan held Sophia's hand tightly. He looked at Jessica with a calm, devastating smile. His voice sounded like a judgmental bell. Actually, he said, that night when Sophia came to my rescue, I wasn't the man you see today. My friend David and I were doing a dare. I said to him, "You know I can find a woman who will love me even if I look like nothing? Even if I'm dressed poor and broken." David laughed and said, "No woman in this world will look at you twice." Then David said, "If I fail, I'll give him $500 million. The crowd gasped. Jessica's jaw dropped open. David almost won. Almost? Because the humiliation I faced, the rejection, the insults, the way Margaret and Jessica spat on me, almost broke me. But then he turned to look at Sophia, his eyes softening. Then Sophia came along. She saved me. Without knowing who I really was. She offered her jacket, her scarf to cover my shame. She defended me when the world mocked me. She saw my heart. Ryan raised his voice, silencing Jessica's crying. "So Jessica, no. You can never be my wife. You were blinded by greed. You mocked a man because he had nothing. But Sophia is my lost rib, the queen of my world, the one destiny wrote next to my name." He turned completely to Sophia, his voice now trembling. "Sophia, today you are not just leaving your painful past behind. You are stepping into the fullness of who you were meant to be. You are my fiancée, my partner, my queen. Welcome to my world." And so, as the sun shone on Sophia's diamond dress, it became clear to everyone present, destiny may be delayed, but it can never be denied.